Charles Mingus was a large American jazz bass and sometimes keyboard player. His first instrument was cello, but he couldn't get classical work because he was black. He played with some very well-known jazz musicians and has become very well-known himself. He worked for 3 decades, the 50s, 60s and 70s, and then died. He deplored the substance habits of other jazz musicians, married 4 times, and would brag about his sexual exploits. He gained a reputation for a fearsome temper and died of Lou Gehrig's disease. His legacy in music, and jazz in particular, is well known, and his music has been the subject of considerable study. Hi, my name's Dan. So this obviously is an album by Charles Mingus. It's my first listen to this album, and it's an album of third stream. Now, before today, I didn't know what that meant, so I'm going to feel the need to explain that. It's a crossover between classical music and jazz music. So this blends big band jazz with relatively contemporary classical music. Some of the classical feels are kind of more traditional, but some of them are a bit more in the kind of uh, fairly modern stuff. Sometimes these two things are happening effectively at the same time, but more often it's kind of moving from a jazz feel to a classical feel or back again. Um, there's quite a lot of variety here. There is a big band slash, it's not really an orchestra, but a band doing this stuff. Let's pick on some of the tracks. So there's Adagio ma non troppo is probably the most classical uh, feeling track. It's got quite a kind of traditional feel, mostly. Don't Be Afraid, The Clown's Afraid Too also blends in circus feel to the music. Hobo Ho features bass, so Charles Mingus was a bassist, but he's not really pushing that. A lot of jazz albums, when the person who's the kind of named leader of it is, so say it's Thelonious Monk, who's a pianist, you kind of feel that definitely the the piano takes front and center. Here, it really isn't the bass that is up there, and it's the composition is the thing that's important here. But there is a track, Hobo Ho, which features the bass, particularly at the start, which is nice. Um, the track, I think it's the last but one, called The Chill of Death, features a poetic recitation by Charles Mingus of which is about death. Um, there's a couple of tracks that have sound effect bits at the start and the end. So The Eye of Hurricane Sue and the one that I mentioned before about clowns both have kind of atmospheric stuff at the start and the end. Some sections are quite avant-garde, especially the more classical bits where there's kind of discordance and chaotic feels. But actually, some of the what in other ways might be more fairly standard jazz feels sections have extra lines going on that are a bit more chaotic. It's kind of somewhat behind the kind of main thing that's soloing. There's maybe another one that's off that line and pulling it in, putting tension into it. Sometimes there's two of those going on, so it kind of disrupts the feel there. So there's quite a mix of stuff going on here. It's quite a rich musical experience, I'd say. If you're going to enjoy this, you need to be okay with a certain amount of jazz-like chaos going on. There's a big vision to it. It feels a bit like a vanity project, but I don't know how well it went down. I quite enjoyed it. It kept me being surprised. It has lots of ideas in it. It definitely kind of um, yeah. I felt like the mix and the different flavors of mix kept it interesting. I would say that at heart, it's really kind of it's a piece of art that's trying to say something about relationship between jazz and classical music. I said in a comment recently that I tend not to review albums about their artistic merit, but more about then what it's like as an experience to listen to, which is the thing that I'm particularly interested in. And I found this an engaging and interesting listening experience. So yeah, I liked it. As always, at this point, I'd like to invite you to tell me what you think of this album, so please do leave a comment. And that's it from me for now.